Yes, so I'm Joe Arnold from Arnold and Baldwin Chartered Surveyors, and I was involved within the working group having a look at the technical standard. To begin with, we were all rushing around thinking, oh, what can we create this product? What can we make this look like? How this is going to be amazing? And then we keep on having to rein ourselves in to say, hang on. First thing we need to do is to create a standard. From those standards, products can then be developed, and then we can move the industry forward. So the first thing that had to be done is obviously to create the technical standard. So the first place to start really is to go onto the RICS website and to have a look at the home survey standard. You'll see obviously it was created in November 2019, and as we know, we've had all sorts of issues with lockdowns, as we say, and hiccups along the way, which has delayed the rollout of this. So my presentation today is going to sort of run through the home survey standard and go through the aspects that I think are going to make some changes for us within our practice, which might help you in turn. Now, we all run our businesses in different ways. We all conduct our surveys in different ways. One thing that came back that it was quite clear that there is a difference in standard between practices. So what we needed to do is to try to raise that standard to ensure that the consumers all receive the level of detail and the level of reporting that is expected of us as chartered surveyors, and to give them confidence in the products, and also to give confidence to other stakeholders in the industry, such as solicitors, estate agents, mortgage brokers, whoever it may be, to know that if they are purchasing a home survey, that there is a good standard there. I have had some feedback from people who've said that that the standard really doesn't change very much. Well, congratulations to you guys. That shows that obviously your standard is already top notch. So this is about trying to help people, particularly in the rise of new surveyors that are joining the industry, and to help tech providers to be able to look at what is the benchmark, what is it that we need to do as a minimum standard to help us to deliver new products into the marketplace. So there's some acknowledgements there to everybody that was involved. As you can see, there were a wide spectrum of businesses, large corporate surveying firms, lending institutions, legal advisors. Lots of people were involved and consulted in this process to ensure that it is a product which or a standard which is fit for all and fit for purpose for the future moving forwards. So the contents is a good place to obviously start to help you to drive yourself towards the level of or the issues within surveys that you're sort of worried about. And it's a great clear document to help you to be able to navigate your way through the new home surveys. So I think the first thing to say really is that there's not a massive amount to be scared of. And I was watching back the YouTube video which was produced by the RICS, where a number of practitioners who've been involved in this were talking. And one thing that I'm sure he will not mind me mentioning, Michael Holden said that really our role is to hold the hand of the customer from the start of the journey through to completion of the instruction, but also to be giving them a call afterwards and to help them through. The majority of people in the home buying and selling process, they get paid when the transaction completes. So the estate agent gets paid when the deal gets done. The mortgage broker gets paid when the mortgage money gets paid out. The solicitors sometimes are no win, no fee. They need the deal to transact before the fees get paid. We truly are, as chartered surveyors, an independent person that is there to help the buyer, metaphorically put our arm around the buyer, help them to feel confident that they're doing the right thing. So for me, this standard tries to educate us as surveyors in the importance of that. So that's one change for me, really. It's in how you conduct your business to make sure that you are helping the consumer. It is a professional statement, is the category of the statement of the standard, and then you have a glossary of some of the terms that are used within the standard, which will help you to be able to set the context of what it is we mean by historical building, or what it is you mean by inspection or levels of service, defining location. So I'll move through the document to be able to sort of give you an overview of where I feel that there are some areas that are worthwhile raising to your attention. Now, I don't practice in Scotland, so I can't go over too much to do with that. So perhaps if you are practicing in Scotland, it might be worthwhile finding somebody locally if you are struggling to just sort of have a look at that side of things. So the first thing is moving through into conflicts of interest and referral fees. So obviously we are aware that referral fees are often demanded or need to be paid. And this is just trying to explain how we go about that process. So making sure that there's not any pound notes handed under the table or bottles of wine that are just handed out willy-nilly. It's making sure that we are clearly stating to the customer that yes, there is some financial consideration which is being transacted for your details to be passed to us. So it's making sure that everybody is aware of any referral fee and it's stated within the terms of engagement. So it just helps to clean up any potential conflicts of interest that may be perceived should a claim arise in the future. Qualifications and experience. So RICS members must be qualified when they are producing these reports. It's very important. Make sure that surveyors have the knowledge of the tasks to be undertaken and understand the risks involved. Understand the level of survey that you're undertaking. Are you actually able to conduct level 3 building survey reports? Is your knowledge there yet? Making sure that you possess that experience and the ability to carry out the duties in relation to the appropriate level of service. Identifying your own limitations and taking appropriate action where your knowledge and experience is found to be inadequate. So if you do get an instruction that comes in and you think, oh my gosh, I've never undertaken a building like this before, should you really be taking it on? There's no issue in laying down an instruction. It's more important that you're taking on the level of instruction that you are happy with, and you'll find that you'll probably get more respect from your referrers if you are always operating within your area of expertise. So knowledge of locality and the nature of the property. So it's making sure that the RICS members are familiar with the nature of the property that you're looking at and the region that it's situated within. So for example, I'm not going to go down to Cornwall or somewhere where there may be Mundic properties or somewhere where there's mining issues that I'm not really fully conversant with, as I know my patch in London very, very well. So it's just making sure that we are we're covering the location and the types of properties that are within our knowledge base, essentially. Making sure that we're up to date with current guidance on common and uncommon building styles. So, for example, there's a huge rise at the moment in the modular construction, off-site construction. So it's just having a think around, is there enough information out there for you on those properties to be able to undertake those surveys competently? And it might be that we need to do some more CPD, some more training in those areas to specialize in those modern methods of construction. So again, this is all fairly standard practice. It's making sure that everybody is clear though on what is expected. So client liaison for me is one of the main changes, I suppose, in people's working practices. For us, we kind of already do a lot of this, but it's just sort of trying to make everybody aware of what the expectations are of regulated firms, to make the reasonable steps to help the customer to understand the differences between the levels of service, making sure that the customer is choosing the right level of support. How many times do you have someone saying, I need a full building survey? And it's like, well, actually, you don't really need a full building survey on that 1990s mid-terraced house. What is it that you're looking for a building survey for? Mum and dad said I have to get a building survey. It's just what they had. Or the solicitor says that the home buyer report isn't worthy of anything. You need a full building survey. Well, we can help them to dispel those myths. So sometimes where you're receiving an instruction, maybe through an online portal where somebody's just put in a building survey, it may be that's not the right product. They may have put in a home buyer report. It might not be the right product. It's our responsibility to ensure that the customer is getting the right product. So going through the different ranges of surveys, making the customer aware of the fee that will be charged for the service. People have said that they don't like hidden fees. They just want to know what is the fee. So it's worthwhile even publishing your fee scales on your website to try to make it as clear as possible to the customer what the product is going to be costing them. Agree the terms of engagement. Agree the format of the report. So if you are using the RICS home survey suite, then great, send them a sample report. If you are using a different type of product, making sure that they are aware of the product that is going to be utilized. And then explain the intended future use of the property. So this is quite key, really. If your customer is a first-time buyer, then they're going to need a little bit more hand-holding through the process. If they're a buy-to-let landlord, for example, it might be that you need to think about room sizes. Is the bedroom actually big enough to be rented out as a bedroom, for example? Thinking about what they're going to be using that building for to ensure that the information you're giving the client is fit for purpose. So obviously, moving on to the levels of service. I think Andrew has already been through the levels of service, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Terms of engagement are quite similar, really, to the previous terms of engagement. It's making sure that everything is out in the open. So referral fees, etc., already been touched on. So it's worthwhile just running through the home survey standard and making sure your terms of engagement are fit for purpose. Leasehold properties, it's making sure that we are identifying the issues which typically arise within leasehold tenures. So perhaps escalating ground rents, maybe there's obscene service charges, identifying anything which is obvious and relevant matters, as we already do within the leasehold space, but just making sure that you stand back and think, am I competent to be taking on leasehold properties? Have I thought about everything? Have I thought about the wider implications of the estate or the estate rent charges, however they may be impacting on the buildings? Recommend that the clients take legal advice on interpreting the lease, and if you have seen that actually it looks like the development isn't being maintained very well, flagging it up so that the solicitors can raise additional inquiries to make sure there's an effective management company in place, or if there's any big Section 20 works coming up, for example. So carrying out the service, locality, as I've already touched on, making sure you do fully know your location. Make sure that you're collecting information from the property owner and the agents. So there's some good points here, some good tips on making sure that you're asking for information up front from the selling agent, or if you can get in touch with the homeowner to find out, what previous alterations have been undertaken, what improvement works have you made, having a look at the energy performance certificates, which I'll come on to later. Checking to see have they got planning permission for that extension, did they get building regulations approval for the removals of the walls, are there any guarantees and warranties, looking for evidence of service agreements and lease details. It's just checking all of that information up front, providing the customer with the information that they need, and that will make sure that they get a report which is fit for purpose, and it will also stop them coming back with post-valuation or post-survey queries, and you know that you're helping to set that buyer up for ultimate success. 3.3 equipment, there's a bit there on equipment, but I'll go on to the toolkit a bit later on, so I'll skip through that for now. The inspection methodology and scope of the inspection, obviously it's most of that is still the same. I'll go on to the safety during the inspection in a bit. Recording information. So this is one tip, I suppose, really, which I'm sure Alexandra will back me up on, the importance of making sure that you are keeping recording your information. So if you're having a conversation with the client, I would be making sure that you are recording the conversations that you have with your client. There is obviously recording the information on site, so your construction, the condition of the properties, the fabric of the building, your sketches and diagrams, however it might be that you're writing over the sales particulars, floor plans, showing where you've done your damp meter readings and things, but make sure you take a photograph of that and upload it into your file so that you have a record of that should a claim ever arise. But equally, if you have conversations with your customer post-survey, it's making sure that you are taking notes of that conversation so that you are able to use that if a claim is ever brought against you in the future. The amount of times I suppose I hear that, oh gosh, but I told them in the report that they needed to get a damp and timber infestation report, but they obviously haven't bothered. But if you have that in a telephone call as well, you can back yourself up to say, but I did also tell them in a telephone call as well on such and such a date and such a time. It really will help you to carry a robust file. So not everything in this standard is there to design to tell the surveyor, you must do this, this is the way you must do it, regulation, regulation. It's also there to help to protect you and your business to ensure that you're setting yourself up for ultimate success and thinking about those areas where people may judge you later on. So within the main report, I'd say the majority of this next section are fairly similar, really. It's just trying to make sure that you're using terminology which people understand. One thing that really did shock me, really, I suppose, when we were doing the research, is that the average reading age of a UK citizen is somewhere between the age of 8 and 9, which is really quite shocking, really. And how are they supposed to understand what we're on about in our reports? And that was sort of some of the feedback that was coming back, that a photo tells 1,000 words, and show us what it is that you mean, which is why there's been more of a drive, really, to bring in more photographs. And one of the reasons why I was brought in originally into the RICS working groups is because I found that I wanted to take video recordings of buildings and show people what I was seeing, so to try to put it into context. But I didn't feel that the previous standard allowed for me to do that, because it was very much, follow the home buyer report rules, whereas this standard is a standard which would allow technology companies to create new products confidently, and for us to use those products confidently, as long as they are part of the tech affiliate scheme. Anyway, I'm digressing. So obviously there's a definition there of what's included within the level 1, the level 2 and the level 3 survey, so make sure you are fully conversant with that. It is quite similar. It's making sure, though, that you truly are providing the level of service that you say you are. So if you're saying that you are providing a building survey, that is a level 3 report. You may not be using an RICS building survey template, but if you're using your own Word document and you're calling it a building survey and it is effectively a level 3, it is a survey level 3 report. So make sure that your surveyors are up to the standard of a level 3. Ask yourself, is this level 2, level 3? If you're creating your own product, or if you have your own in-house technology, Word documents, whatever it might be, it's making sure that actually, do my survey products meet level 1? Do they meet level 2? Sometimes your level 2 might only be a level 1. Sometimes your level 2 might actually be a level 3. And you may be doing yourself a disservice, because you could be charging more for all of that extra information that you're putting in. So it just gives you a good opportunity to take stock and to have a look at what your business offering is, and are you charging yourself out at the right level? Are you, when you're on a price comparison website, are you providing more than the other people who are charging out at less? It's trying to help to set that context, really. But I appreciate it's come at a very busy time, but unfortunately needs must, and it will raise our standards, and your customers will be thankful of it later on. So the summary or overall opinion. Now, this really is, for me, the last thing that you should write. And it should be, as it says here, a brief, simple, clear overview that will help orientate the client. So this should not really be standard phrases. I do see quite a lot standard paragraphs just thrown in here. It's okay to have standard paragraphs, but try to make them bespoke and unique to the subject property. Tell them, whether they should be doing this or not, whether or not they need to have additional reports, or if you are thinking, oh my gosh, this is a bad property, it's trying to articulate it through that overall opinion. Or if actually everything is fine, this is a really good buy, it's giving them the confidence to know that they're doing the right thing. Risk to occupants, obviously there is not really much changed in that section, but again, trying to think about the health and safety side of things, particularly if your client is a buy-to-let landlord, then obviously thinking about risks to tenants, but also risks to children. But I think we always have that in our minds anyway. Legal matters, it's still remembering that legal matters here are probably going to be more and more pertinent as our industry continues to adapt and evolve. For those of you who follow me on LinkedIn, you would have seen that I shared this week that Rightmove have taken all of the Rightmove surveyor comparable tool information that we provide, and they have now packaged that up as an AVM, and they're selling that information to lenders for them to be able to lend against. This is showing how the information we are providing is creating automation in our industry. Now, I think people would have thought 5 years ago, you can't automate surveying. What are you on about? You can't automate surveying. But you can automate those easy valuations where those 3-bedroom semis that all sell for £500,000 or £250,000, wherever you are in the country, you know, there is a standard there. And lenders who are only lending 50%, where is the risk to them? So there's going to be less and less surveyors going out into the building in a mortgage valuation space, whether that might be a desktop valuation, an automated valuation, or a hybrid valuation of some description. There will be less and less surveyors going in through that front door. So there will be less surveyors picking up those legal matters that the solicitors need, because the solicitors, as we know, they don't go into buildings, and there's pressure on their fees as well, and they're not going to be going to inspect those properties. So now more than ever, it's very important that we are picking up those legal matters. I often provide training to our conveyancing clients to help them to understand how to interpret our surveys and listen to what information they need from us as well to be providing to them. So thinking about things like conservation areas, especially Article 4 designations, again for those buy-to-let style properties, thinking about the listed status of properties and the need for consents, having a look online to see what is actually listed in that property and seeing has it actually been altered, providing the solicitor with some direction of travel. Any works that have been undertaken before, which, you know, Hart v Large is coming up, and thinking about planning permissions, any tree preservation orders, environmental issues. So think about those legal aspects. Guarantees, as we're aware, it's making sure that there are guarantees and whether those guarantees are potentially fit for purpose. Or whether the works were actually fit for purpose in the first instance. The amount of times I see garden front boundary walls that are built hard up to the front elevation, and then there's a chemical DPC that's drilled nicely along on top of what was already a damp-proof course that's just hidden under the ground and running up alongside the garden wall. Well, why not trim the wall back? But anyway, so there's these issues that you can see. Sometimes those guarantees are worthless anyway, but it's flagging them up, making sure that any new windows and doors have got those fencer certificates. If you see cavity wall insulation, installation of any other services, or Japanese knotweed, whatever it might be, it's just thinking about any guarantees that should be passing with that sale. And then any other matters. I mean, any other matters, I mean, the amount of things that we see within properties, it's trying to utilize that section to flag up those bits that maybe don't fit into any of the relevant sections in the report. Now, this for me is one of the areas, energy matters, where this does change what we do. There is a huge climate change agenda going on right now. Lenders are even being put under scrutiny to tell government what level on average is the EPC of their back book. So they've been scrambling around having a look at the EPCs of buildings that they've lent money on to try to work out on average what is our EPC rating. And government has decided that the EPC rating will probably have to come to a C. Well, and that's going to be nigh on impossible. But it's also going to put pressure on those who are most financially challenged. So your terraced properties, maybe that were built in the mid 1800s, early 1900s, the cheaper stock that people have to live in, and now they're supposed to be able to drive up the EPC rating to a standard of a C. Well, it's going to be very difficult to do that. And then if lenders are going to be also having to focus on this C category, then they may need to start to charge increased premiums or rates to those poor EPC households because they don't want them in the book, because they've got to balance the book. So you can just see, can't you, how energy is going to become more and more prevalent. So within the RICS reports, it's now particularly within the level 2 and level 3. The level 2, you're supposed to be reading through the EPC and picking up those discrepancies. So we've all seen it where it says it's cavity brick or whatever it may be, and it's not, it's solid, or that it's fully double glazed, and actually it's not. So we're supposed to be going through this EPC now and picking up those discrepancies. And within the level 3, we're also going to need to comment on the appropriateness of the advice that the energy assessor has given. So it's going to really have to raise the standard, I think, of those EPC assessors because we're going to start to challenge them more and more, which hopefully will drive up better standards in that space. Providing cost advice. So some of us obviously provide costings within our building surveys. Not everybody does, but where you do, it's important that you are stating where that information is coming from and letting them know that it's just a guide only. Don't set people up for a false hope and try not to get it too wrong. You need to be able to state it's going to cost whatever it's going to cost to do the roof. But still, I would recommend, and this recommends obviously, that you still should get written quotations from appropriate organisations that are in the market, and that will also help people to understand the time frames around how long you might have to wait to get your roof replaced or whatever it might be. So if you're going to provide costings advice, have a good read of that section. So further investigations, and what came out during the process really was that there were lots of calls for additional reports. Get a damp and timber report, get a structural engineer's report, whatever it might be. And one thing that everybody sort of, I suppose, in the feedback was that there are too many caveats and assumptions and people just calling for reports willy-nilly. So that's one thing that we need to really, I suppose, pull our socks up on and really start to have a think about, well, do we actually need to call for XYZ report? Whatever it may be. Obviously, we still need to call them where we need to call for them. It would be a disservice to the clients if we didn't. We need those experts. But try to think about a description of the affected element and why further investigation is required, when the further investigation should be carried out. So do they need to do this investigation straight away before exchange of contracts, or is it something that they just need to look at later on before they do some work? And a broad indication of who should carry out the further investigation. For example, their qualifications, membership of a trade body or competent person scheme. Don't just say that relevant expert or some people have come back and said that reputable roofing contractor. Well, what does reputable mean? Is there a trade body? Try to drive people into the right space. So findings of the report, again, you should make sure this part of holding the hand of the client, making sure that they feel confident in the decisions that they've made to purchase the property. Our RICS members should set aside adequate time to discuss the findings of the report. Now, not everybody wants to have a chat with you. People are busy. It may be that they don't want to talk to you at all, but you can find out those expectations when taking the initial instruction. Do you want me to give you a ring when I finished my inspection? Do you want to read the reports, and then once you've got the report, then give me a call? Would you like to just receive the report and then come back to me if you're ready? Have those conversations, have it written down on your file so you can't be criticised later on. The amount of time and the breadth and depth of the discussions will vary according to the level of service, and your method of communication will depend upon what the client wants. So clearly explain the status of the discussion between the client at the beginning. Don't go beyond the scope of the report. Don't go beyond the scope of the terms of engagement, and try to keep a written record of the exchange. So I think that what we'll find is, as technology providers pick up this standard and start to develop more and more solutions, you will find that cloud-based telephone systems will be incorporated. So we use cloud-based technology, and you can record the customer calls and it can be assigned to the customer file, and then there's no sort of hiding away from what it is that you've said. So service completion, once the service is complete and post-report delivery discussions have had with the client, the RICS member should make sure the project file is properly closed. So this is making sure that everything is all held on one file. Sometimes we may have an SCT stuck in Rightmove or some photos in one place, and when our RICS regulation came to inspect us, they told us that yes, congratulations, well done, we need to see one file with everything in it, the terms of engagement, the invoice, everything for that one customer. And you need to keep those documents stored for, well, it says 15 years really, but there was some sort of discrepancy around 15 or 16 years. So for me, I'm just keeping everything. It may be, but my business has been running nearly for 15 years, but I've still got all of those first files that we did. helps me to reminisce sometimes if I want to. So software and products. RICS members and regulated firms must satisfy themselves that any software used to deliver products and produce reports is developed in accordance with this standard. So it's making sure that your software providers are tech affiliates. If they are not, if you're using your own product or using a software provider that doesn't just cut the mustard or doesn't meet the standard, you are responsible. And that will mean that every single one of your reports that you are producing is against the standard, and that will be used against you if you have a problem later on by somebody on the other side. So documents storage and retention, again, it's just making sure that you keep copies of all relevant correspondence. Any verbal discussions that you have, just make sure that you try your best to keep everything on the file for 15 years, and make sure that all of your team are doing the same thing, because 15 years is a long time, and people don't stay in their jobs in the same way as they used to. People tend to be within their roles for a lot less than those sort of 30-40 year employees of the past. So Appendix A goes through into the definitions of the levels of survey, survey level 1, level 2, level 3. So please do make yourself conversant with those. Benchmarking again, so it's trying to have a look at what is expected of you within each survey. What's expected of you? What should you be doing within a level 1, a level 2, or a level 3? Should I be getting in the loft? Should I be opening all of the windows? I mean, I think that was one thing that that I heard was being sort of criticised around. Well, surely you open every single window on a level 2. Well, yeah, I mean, if you can do, obviously it's that's the best thing to be doing. But this is a minimum standards document where you so there's a minimum expectation of what is required. And then it sort of explains a bit more about drainage, so when you should be lifting the inspection chambers and when you should not, and then other services as well. So please do go through all of those relevant sections. There's also here on Appendix C, knowledge of the general environment issues in a locality. So that helps you to see what should you be looking for. A lot of this is desktop research before you go out. So flooding, is it in a flood risk area? And I think we will start to see these sorts of environmental issues hopefully being brought in as API links into products. Now that the standard is out there, it will enable people to develop new innovative solutions to be able to provide you with this information up front, so you don't have to spend a lot of time having a look at the radon reports and whatever it may be. So making sure that you highlight things like noise from the railways. I mean, this is all typical stuff that obviously we all do. If the property is close to an airport, then yes, it's going to be, well, it would have been very noisy before, but maybe less noisy now, but it still needs to be flagged up that obviously there are airplanes flying over you. So just having a look at those issues. Minimum requirements for all terms of engagement, so making sure that you check your terms of engagement against those minimum requirements. Also within the Red Book there is some minimum terms of engagement as well, which is worthwhile cross-referencing. Risks to occupants, so having a look at those different aspects within the property which are safety hazards, so asbestos, any vermin, lack of emergency escapes, absence of safety glass, falls from height, those ponds that don't have any covers over them. Automatic gates are pretty bad, obviously, they can cause issues. So it's just trying to familiarize yourself with what are those safety hazards, and actually do we have a health and safety checklist as part of our inspection notes, making sure that everybody within your business are all fully aware of what those aspects are. And then again, as I say, the legal matters, which I think are going to come more and more into the forefront of what we do as less and less people go out, and that traditional route to market of the lender being the one that produces the surveys diminishing. So who's going to spot the flying freehold? Can you do that on an AVM? No. How do you do that on an AVM? Do you do it on a desktop valuation? Well, it depends on how thorough the desktop valuation it is. Can you do that on a physical inspection? Well, yes, of course you can. And this is where the home survey comes into its own. As technology starts to take over in certain areas, we need to really start to champion ourselves and our expertise, and the fact that we are independent and we do represent the buyer and put our arm around them and try to help them, and we are the only professional that goes in to do the inspection to help the buyer, and we are the only person that undertakes that market valuation to work out what the property is actually worth. So these legal issues are the ways for you to be able to sell your products and your services into your customers to show your worth, because we bring an awful lot to the table. We just need to articulate that and work ourselves in our marketing teams. I'm an SME as well. I understand the pain when you're smaller and how do you do all of this. But unfortunately, we just have to invest the time in it to begin with, and then hopefully it will start to pay dividends later on. So with legal matters, I've digressed. Evidence of HMO, tenancies. Has the property been let on Airbnb? Maybe less so now, but you know, the amount of times you go into a property and it's all made up and you think, hang on a minute, but there's no one living here, there's no clothes anywhere, but this is all made up. Well, maybe it's because it's an Airbnb property. Future uses of properties, any signs of trespass, those gates that open up into the neighbours' gardens, because you know, some people somewhere, we love our neighbours and we get on very well. Other places people think, I don't even know who my neighbour is. How sad is that? But anyway, right, so yeah, so the legal matters obviously there are good for you to just familiarise yourself with. So I'm just going to skip through now to the equipment checklist, because obviously there was a lot of work that was undertaken into a toolkit. So what are the right tools for the job? So here are a list of some of the tools that you may need for your job. So the good old binoculars, a ladder, magnet. Why a magnet? Well, lead is not magnetic, so it can help you to work out whether something is lead or not. Measuring devices. What are the right measuring devices? Electronic moisture meters, and there is a definition and a description of why you may need these within the toolkit too. So your torch for looking under the stairs or in the lofts or the drains. Lifting up equipment for the drains. Make sure you don't put your back out when you're lifting up those drains that are often seized. Spirit levels. Pocket mirrors for cavity inspections, if you can get in there. The good old plumb bob. This one has really stood the test of time, hasn't it? No technology has managed to overtake that one. And yeah, compass. I mean, a lot of this is in our mobile phones now. I mean, I use my iPhone for my compass and for my digital camera. I don't use it for my protective clothing, but yeah. So hopefully that just gives you a bit more of a view of what it is that you need to have. Then there's the health and safety checklist. So pre-inspection, just having a look at the property, thinking about that, helping you to understand as a business what you need to educate your employees on, trying to look after the employees, sort of traveling to the inspection, what to do in certain weather conditions, tiredness, making sure you're not using your mobile phone while you're driving, all those different sorts of things there that help. One thing that this has been a huge collaboration between SMEs, lenders and corporates, as I say. And I always remember when I had an inspection by one of the corporate firms of surveyors who really do try to help us out, as SMEs. They work very hard, and panel managers do, where they told us about just a simple policy of making sure that if your surveyor is not back by a certain time, that you have a process where you ring that surveyor to make sure that they are okay, because one time a surveyor did fall through the floorboards and they were stuck under the floorboards in the cellar, but because they didn't have a process in place, the person had to go down on a missing persons list because he may not have gone home because he had a Barney with his missus. Silly, right? But if we have that one process in place, then we are able to report it to the police and they don't treat it as a missing person, and they're able to go and try and find them. So there are these little nuggets that we think, why would you do that? But there are reasons behind everything. So have a good look through the health and safety checklist. And then the vendor liaison checklist. So we spoke earlier on about asking the vendor questions about extensions, building regulations approvals, but it also helps you to build a relationship with the vendor whilst you're in the property to make things easier, put them at ease as well. Good for your brand, good for your reputation, and they're going to feed back to the estate agent and the solicitor anyway. But there are examples there of vendor questionnaires, that are worthwhile, obviously, incorporating, and keep those on your file. The vendor said that they had the building regulations. I assumed they did. I told the solicitor to check the building regulations. If they haven't done it, what more could I have done? And there's some more there, obviously, legal issues, repairs and defects. There's some COVID-19 health and safety questions as well, and some other notes. So I'm pretty much on time.